Today's games are meant to keep our attention, to fully immerse us in the atmosphere and gameplay as developers intended. There are games that are challenging and require practice, there are games that are competitive but rewarding, and then there are games that hardly qualify as a game rather than a piece of art. When I discovered What Remains of Edith Finch, I had all the intentions of it being a horror game through the beginning. As the game went on, I started to realize that nothing was going to jump out from the corner and chase me. Instead, it did something entirely different, and I couldn't be happier that it did. For those who are looking to play this game rather than watching me spoil it, turn away, buy the game, and enjoy the best hour and 30 minutes of your life. Well, maybe that's a bit much to say for a game. Gamers shouldn't buy this game looking for puzzles, competition, or thrilling action where the main character may die and you have to respawn at a checkpoint. Instead, expect a beautifully written story with one character who tells the story of her family, the Finches. Expect to be dazzled by wonderful and breathtaking game design and a heartfelt musical score. When you buy this game, you're not just buying a game, but a masterpiece that I believe will last for ages. So maybe you're not quite buying what I'm selling, or maybe you're just here because you feel the same way and you're hungry for more as I was when I finished the game. Either way, spoilers start right after this sentence, so viewer, be warned. Upon the opening, you find yourself sitting on a boat with a journal in your lap labeled Edith Finch. This book or journal belongs to the main character, Edith Finch, who is supposedly the last one in her family who hasn't died from natural causes. In the beginning and in the end, we briefly see Edith writing in this journal, and it's also the menu of the game when you pause to see what family members you captured and which ones you may have missed. Edith in fact had a son before her death during childbirth. Not only was it very clear at the end that she was pregnant throughout the story, but we get some pretty clear hints throughout the game in parts like,
"Now that there's only one of us left, or maybe two, never would have come when I was 22 weeks pregnant."
In the beginning of the game, you see that someone on the boat is opening Edith's journal, which is already written as it fades into the story where Edith revisits the Finch house. That someone is her son, which the book was probably passed down to after so many years. This is interesting for a subject that I will discuss later on in the video. After Edith's son opens the journal, we are then transferred to Edith's point of view, where she is revisiting her old family home. On the way to the house, Edith gives us foreshadowing and mystery in her dialogue. I automatically knew that I liked the game from this point on, no matter what it did, and it did some pretty weird stuff. The feeling from the first 10 minutes and practically the whole game was the equivalent to being a kid again and want to look everywhere and at everything. The game was so immersive with atmosphere and pretty to look at. The dialogue hinted at some big mystery, some family curse that was only building suspense in me as I craved for more. There were missing signs for Edith's older brother Milton on trees, dialogue on Edith's other brother Lewis and his funeral before she left the house, Edith's mother possibly tempting Edith to return because of some mystery, and a crazy looking house that Edith inherited but never thought she'd come back to. This was all hinted at in the first 10 minutes along with some other things. And then you see the house. Let's be honest, when you walked into a McDonald's or Burger King as a kid for the first time and saw all those tunnels and passageways, you wanted to crawl and explore every inch. And that's pretty much the want I had when I saw this massive jungle of a house. It was literally a kid's dream tree house. The house itself has a history and is briefly shown in the game. Odin buried his wife, Ingeborg, and his newborn son, Johan. Believing it was part of the family curse, Odin sailed his entire house from Norway, but was drowned with the house in 40-foot waves. Odin's daughter Edith and her husband Sven then built a house on Orcus Island. However, the house was never truly complete because over the years more rooms were closed off and new ones were added. When you get in the house, it becomes very eerie. Every room is designed with thought and beauty, and it took me a while before moving on to the upstairs. The entire house is frozen in time from the night Edith and her mother left. As the story progresses, the house becomes less a spectacular mystery and more of a sad memorial with what happened to the family. Every time a family member died, Edith's mother, Dawn, sealed the door while Edith's great-grandmother, Edie, drilled a peephole in retaliation. This makes the rooms look like shrines to lost family members and gives a rather creepy vibe. Each room is their tombstone, and each one left a mark when they were alive, filled with dreams, achievements, memories, and stories that are hanging on the thread of being lost. Edith is writing all these stories down, therefore keeping them alive. This brings us to possibly the biggest message in the entire game. After learning about Walter, Edith then goes on to talk about some important things, including the family curse. She thinks that it was from her great-grandmother's stories that everyone died because they truly believed in a family curse. She goes on and questions whether she should let the stories die with her or let them be known to her unborn son. The fact that she did pass it down to him is interesting because it almost gives into what Edie would have wanted compared to her mother. Thinking about it, and we can all relate to Edith and the want to pass something down to our possible children. All those memories of our family and the crazy stories would be gone if we didn't tell it to others, especially our kids. Edith then goes to the family and pet cemetery with more important dialogue. You can see Edie's influence on many of the graves as she makes each one have a theme on either how they died or what they wished for or achieved. It's almost disturbing to see her cradle this thought of a family curse to the point where people are dying from it. And ironically, she's the one living the longest from any other family member at age 93. At the end of the game, there is a flashback on the last night where Edith's mother, Dawn, and Edie fight while Edith goes and reads a story her grandmother wrote. Edith can hear the argument through the walls as Edie claims that what Dawn fears will not disappear when she leaves the house. Edie also claims that Edith has a right to know the stories of her family, but her mother then rages.
My children are dead because of your stories!
This confirms that Edith's mother was probably the first to realize that the family curse was too much in the minds of this creative family, so much that it would eventually be their end. But from seeing videos here on YouTube, I'd also like to point out the lack of responsibility in the family, especially with Edie. Walter hid most of his life from Barbara's death, and Edie was the one supporting it. Calvin wasn't being watched when playing on a swing that was pointing off the side of a cliff. Molly was locked in her room and went to bed hungry, and therefore accidentally poisoned herself. Besides Edie, Kay left Gregory in the tub, even though she drained it. You should still never leave a baby alone, especially far enough that you can't hear the water turn back on. Gus was left out in a storm flying a kite by himself when someone should have brought him in. There were unnatural accidents that led to death in some cases, and then some were caused by lack of responsibility. Walter's and Lewis' story are probably the best in the game as they both create powerful dialogue, meaning, and great emotion. Walter refers to the family curse as a monster that's waiting for him on the other side of the door, but he mentions how it becomes normal and may be friendly after so long. But in the end, he wants to leave while he can. Walter wants to enjoy just one new day, but then the monster, or family curse, gets him as a train runs him over. Lewis had a fantastic story where cutting off the salmon's heads became such a repetitious job that he decides to escape in his mind. As his imagination takes over, he begins to despise his real life and wants to belong to the made-up world. And at the end, he's to be crowned by his queen as he approaches the guillotine to bow his head. Maybe as a player at this point, you too are starting to believe in a curse with hearing all these stories. Every story seems so coincidental that maybe we should believe in some monster like Walter did. Grief is dealt in odd ways like sailing a house, sealing doors, drilling peepholes, living in a bunker, writing all the stories in a journal, and believing in a family curse. C.S. Lewis once wrote, "No one ever told me that grief felt so like fear." With so many dead, a fearsome family curse feels like a good explanation, a good scapegoat. Sometimes we can't cope with grief, and so we go into denial, making our own monster, our own fear of death. By the end of the game, I fell in love with characters who were dead but felt alive within the stories. I wanted to see them all sit down for breakfast and interact. I wanted to see the house alive with all these creative people doing their own thing. I wanted to see one happy ending. But instead, the game ended how it began. A mystery. Did Edith's son believe in the curse? Or was he smart enough to think differently? If there was a curse, did it end or continue? In the end, there was emptiness in my heart, but a fulfilling meaning in my soul. I was left feeling sad and amazed, dead but alive. What Remains of Edith Finch had a touching tale, powerful messages of grief and meaning, and characters that touched my heart through simple but complex stories. As Marcus Tullius Cicero once said, "The life of the dead is placed in the memory of the living."